let's talk about coding. Does anyone know which is the most popular programming language in the world? Incredible. I think it's the first time in my life no one says Python or Ruby on Rails, right? Say it again? Python. Okay. Well, no, it's not Python. It's JavaScript. Yeah? It's JavaScript. It's by distance the most popular programming language. It's actually 2.3 times more popular than Python, according to GitHub. What is GitHub, guys? Repo. It's the Bible of coding. Yeah? 97% of the world is hosted by GitHub. They know a lot about coding. And according to GitHub, there are around 1 million projects written in Java. It's good. Yeah? 1 million is a lot. Yeah? A little bit more than 1 million in Python and about 2.5 million in JavaScript. So JavaScript is more popular than Java and Python. So next question is why? Why is JavaScript so sexy? Is it because it's faster? Is it easier to learn? Is it more reliable? What's the point about JavaScript, guys? On the web. Yeah, so there is obviously a bunch of reasons. The first one, as someone spotted, is it runs on the web. That seems obvious, but JavaScript was firstly introduced in December 1995. The creator of JavaScript needed 10 days. Some people said 2 weeks. There is some controversial whether he worked on the weekends or not, but it doesn't matter. Small, very short period of time. Yeah. At that time, web browser. Does anyone remember? Some of you were not even born in 1995. Which was the most popular web browser at that time? It was Netscape 4. Yeah, not IE yet. Yeah, so before IE domination, it was Netscape. And at that time, Netscape, the web browser, was something very rudimentary. The only thing you could do is create frames, tables, dancing babies. You remember these things in the 90s? Yeah. And at some point, they realized that the web was the future. Yeah. Some of you may remember the book that Bill Gates wrote in 1995, The Future of Computing. He didn't talk about the internet, right? They had to retire the book 2 weeks later. But anyway, at that time, the browser was growing. And they wanted to add some power to the web. And they realized that HTML, all right, CSS, fair enough, but they needed something else. They needed a script language or a compile language. So Netscape, they knocked some doors. Yeah? Hello, Java, how are you doing? Do you want to run in my system? And Java said, I don't know what a web browser is, I don't care. Hello, Python, do you want to run in a web browser? I don't care. After knocking some doors, they know JavaScript. That was a new language at the time. And JavaScript accepted the challenge. It was a toy language. Eh? Why not? There's nothing to lose, right? So I hope you agree with me that today, when you buy a new laptop, the first thing you do is to install a web browser. Yeah? So web browser is everywhere. And because of that, JavaScript is everywhere. That's the first and most important reason why JavaScript is so important. JavaScript is cannibalizing other programming languages. Starting in 2009, I've jumped in time 14 years, we can run JavaScript on the backend. And that had historical implications. Before 2009, imagine that you got good money, yeah? And you wanted to create a startup. I was keen to say MySpace, probably is not a good example, yeah? But if you had some money to build a startup, before 2009, if you were thinking about the web, you needed at least 2 developers. One to work on the front end, JavaScript, CSS, HTML, right? And you needed someone else to work on the back end. No one really was able to work full stack. It was like unicorns, yeah? So what technologies we had in the back end? We had Python, we had PHP, we had C#, all these things, yeah? Java, of course. But someone realized, wait a minute, if we are using JavaScript on the front end, so we need to learn JavaScript, yeah? Why can't we use JavaScript on the back end? So can anyone tell me what's the name of the system, of the engine running JavaScript on the back end? It's Node.js, correct. Yeah? So Node.js is the second historical reason why JavaScript is so popular. Yeah? So we all know JavaScript is very popular. We know that's the way to go if you want to become rich very quickly. So now the next question is, still JavaScript is a huge world and it's growing year after year. So Can anyone tell me which is the most popular JavaScript plugin slash framework slash library today? React. Does anyone agree on that? Nobody disagrees, right? Oh, Vue. Yeah, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. So how do we measure the popularity of a framework or a library? That's not rocket science. However, thankfully today, in 2019, we have tools to measure popularity. One of them is GitHub. So let me do something. I'm now on Google and I'm typing React GitHub. React is open source, so that means that everybody can contribute and make this piece of software better. So if you go to GitHub, you can see how many people has started React. So that gives you a good feeling about how popular React is. Yeah? Historically speaking, people living in the West, Europe, and US, we believe we are the center of the world, right? And that's why we all believe React is the most popular library. So let me do the same exercise with Vue. Vue.js GitHub. And actually, before pressing enter, who looks after React? Who is the owner of React? It's Facebook. Correct. It's Facebook. Yeah. And before React, who was the king of JavaScript? Angular. That's correct. And who look after Angular? Google. You can say that even if we talk about many technicalities, at the end of the journey, Facebook, Google. Yeah. By the way, I was one of the first Angular developers in the world. I was doing some conferences for Google. You can find me on YouTube. Yeah. But we got Angular, now we got React. Of course, if we go back in time, jQuery, Backbone, blah, blah, blah. We can go back in history a long time ago. And now, thinking about the future, now we got Vue. So we got React, Facebook, Google, Angular, Google. And then, who looks after Vue? Say it again? No. The Chinese. Yeah? Florin, who used to attend these sessions, he knows that word, right? So the Chinese are requesting their slice of the cake because they realize that having the control on the web gives you a lot of power. So, Vue.js, and now let's go to GitHub. So you remember the number on React, how many stars they got? 141K, right? 141K. So if we talk about Vue, it's even more popular, or 10% more popular. And to be honest, the gap is slightly increasing month after month. So globally speaking, Vue is even more popular than React, which is very shocking for people living in Europe. Yeah? However, we are not going to talk about Vue. I would like us to let you know that this is there because coding is about doing the right thing at the right time. And in the future, maybe, if you want to make 200 a day, that's what the market will demand. So just keep an eye on that in the future, right? But today we're going to learn about React because it is true that in Europe, and of course in London, React is way more popular than Vue. Yeah? All the fintech, all the financial services, they are using React. The majority of them, at least. Cool, so let's talk about React. If you have watched the video, you will know that to start working with React, we had to install something called Node, there's a dependency, and something called create React app. So create -React -app. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you think I'm speaking Chinese and you are not Chinese, then go to Meetup, watch the video, not now, tonight, tomorrow, right? With a mojito. So that will show you how to install that tool. So why we need that? In the 90s, when I started to code, creating a new project was as simple as doing right-click index.html. But the web has evolved. So now, creating a complex piece of software requires a lot of plugins, dependencies, and it may be challenging to look after all of them individually. That's why now we do things like Create React App, which is a tool introduced by Facebook, by the way, that installs all we need to efficiently start coding quickly. Yeah? In 2 minutes, we can start coding. Without Create React App, we may need a few days. So, Create React App. The only thing we need to do is to type on a terminal. A terminal is that typical classic black screen with white text on it, usually. Yeah? If you're a Mac user, you can open it terminal. If you're a Windows user, you can open either PowerShell or CMD or Git Bash. There are different alternatives. And if you're a Linux user, I'm sure you know how to do it. So now, create React App anywhere in your hard drive. By default, I'm pointing to my home directory. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then space, and finally the name of the application. So the name of the application will be essentially a new folder, a new directory in your system. So please try to avoid funny characters like tildes and things like that, right? Let's keep it, the simpler the better. So what are we going to build in the next 45 minutes? I don't really mind. I would like to build a list of things. It could be either a list of football teams, Hollywood movies, actors, cities. I don't really mind. That's not important. The important thing about coding is not what you build. It's about feeling motivated to build something that you really like. So guys, you will tell me, what do you want to build today? What's the topic that you want to deal with today? Say it again? Content library. Right. Can we do a bit simpler? Can we, let's talk about, unless you want to talk about something else. Say it again? Whiskey. Wine. Right, let's keep it, let's talk about movies, right? I'm sure everyone likes movies, right? I'm not sure if everyone likes wine. But anyway, yeah, fantastic. Listen, I'm going to display a list of movies. You can create a list of your favorite whiskeys or wines. You can create a list of favorite whatever. Yeah, so I don't mind. Just do whatever you want. So, in my case, I would like to talk about my personal favorite movies. That will be obviously different to your favorite films. So, the title of my app should reflect the content, right? I'm not going to call it Brexit. That will be a bit annoying because I'm not going to talk about Brexit today. Well, I may, but later, right? After some drinks. So, create React app, and now the name of my app. So I would like to call it movies. Simple. If you want to add multiple words, for instance, you can do Hollywood hyphen or dash movies. Yeah. Keep that style. Simple yet effective. In my case, it's movies. And now you press enter. Right, out of coincidence, I already have, unsurprisingly, a folder called movies. So let me, all right, so let me try again. Redirect up movies. Either tradition, a new directory. All right, so let me try a different name. So best movies, for instance, right? Here you go. So when you press enter, you will see there is a lot of stuff going on. So now Facebook is downloading all the dependencies and hopefully just these dependencies that we need in order to start working with modern JavaScript. Do you remember, guys, Street Fighter 2 from the early 90s? Nobody? Okay, some of you, right? Does anyone know how big the game was in terms of this size, the original arcade version? It was something like 24 megs, or a bit more, maybe 30. But in 30 megs, you got fun for decades, right? Some people are still playing. Now, to create a boilerplate project with literally nothing on it, we needed 350 megs. Yeah, so new projects are huge compared to what they used to be, but that's fine, right? Hopefully hard drive is quite cheap nowadays. All right, so once you got the message like happy hacking, whatever, unless you get some red text, that means that it worked fine. And if it worked fine, the next thing I would like to do is to go to Visual Studio Code, which is the text editor, the code editor we invited you to install. Yeah? Do you have any favorite code editor? Yeah. VS Code? Yeah. Beam, fantastic. Yeah, Beam. Anything else? Any other? Someone said Atom before, Sublime, IntelliJ, WebStorm. There are many opportunities. To me, I've been working as a tech lead many years. I don't really mind what the developers I work with use. The important thing about the code is not how you produce it. The important thing is the result. Yeah? However, today, unless you are opinionated, which I completely respect, let me invite you to use VS Code. So VS Code is a software tool created by Microsoft, and it's super fast, super reliable, open source, for free, with lots of supported plugins. And to me, one of the most important things, can anyone tell me in which language, in which programming language, Java, I spoiled it a bit, in which programming language VS Code is written? It's JavaScript, which is a bit shocking, because in your mind, you may associate JavaScript to the web, yeah? www.mywebsite.com. But today, JavaScript runs natively everywhere, even as native apps. FYI, now we are creating the mobile version of Codery. I'd like to show that at the end of this session. It's a native app, so you go to the Play Store or to the Apple Store, however, the App Store, whatever, and you download it, yeah? But that's still JavaScript. That's another reason why it's so popular. Before JavaScript, I worked for Sky TV, for instance. And the Sky TV, which is a great company, they had many teams building the same story, the same stuff, yeah? So they have the Android team, they have the iOS team, they have the web team, they have the Roku team, they have the Smart TV team, they have the iPad team. So whenever Sky wants to implement a new feature, they have to build the same stuff in parallel 8 or 9 times, which is not efficient. Thankfully, today with JavaScript, you can build the same stuff once and you deploy it everywhere. That's why it's so awesome, right? Saves a lot of time, money, and energy, and headaches. All right, so let's go to VS Code. So the first thing I would like to do is to open the project that we have just installed. And how do we do that? Well, you see open folder on top, or alternatively, you can go with the classics, right? File, I cannot zoom it, unfortunately. File open, yeah? This is pretty fundamental, nothing to do with coding. And when you click open folder, you need to find the location of the project that you have created 3.5 minutes ago. So it's important to know where your project is. By default, unless you did something weird, projects are created on your home directory. How do you find your home directory? If you're a Mac user, that's pretty simple, right? You go to the home icon, and then I can immediately spot that my project is there. If you're a Windows user, that may be a bit more challenging. So use Windows home directory, it looks something like that. C:/users/your user ID, for instance, sexyboy25, and then the name of your repo. Yeah, that will be the sort of the location of your project. All right, so you select the folder, you click open, and now you can see I got some files and folders that we don't understand yet, but don't worry about that. So can anyone tell me how do we start a server with a modern JavaScript application? Express, all right, but yeah, easier than that. Assuming Express is already there. So to run a web application, we need to do something first. We need to start a server. Okay? That's the requirement. So there is a de facto standard command to start a server in JavaScript, which is npm start. Yeah? Oh yeah, npm start. Yeah. So technically speaking, we could type npm start from the terminal, yeah? But from a productivity perspective, I'm not a big fan of that. Why? Because if I break my platform, if I break my application, yes, my server will throw an error. But I hope you see the problem here. I will need to go back and forth from the terminal to the code to see what's going on. I don't like that sort of window ping pong. Yeah, I don't like to move from one window to the other. Thankfully, VS Code comes with a built-in terminal. So I can get my server running inside that window, which is literally awesome. And how do we do that? If we go to the top of your screen, on the right-hand side of the menu, you'll find an option called Terminal, and then New Terminal. And then look, boom, you see? You got your classic terminal window incorporated as a new panel in VS Code. That will massively facilitate the process of creating sexy web applications. All right, so once you've done that, now let's try to start the server. So the only thing you need to do is to type npm start. Let's see what happens. Look, I didn't touch my laptop at all, and suddenly now the control has been delegated to the web browser. So as you may notice, it's trying to load something, and here we go. Yeah? If you manage to get that logo, that means you are ready to start coding with React. All your dependencies are sorted. By the way, that's the React logo. That has nothing to do with the Chernobyl TV show on Amazon Prime, right? Cool. Any questions so far? No? All right, so that screen is pretty straightforward. There is a single message, so let's pay attention to the message. Edit, source app, and say to reload. What that means? Well, React is inviting us to go to Visual Studio Code, and on the left-hand side, on the left panel, you will see an src folder, stands for source code, and then app.js. So when we open it, look at what we got here. So this is the source code that generates this web application. Web application, source code, web application. Can anybody tell me which language is that? The highlighted text. HTML. Does anybody disagree on that? All right, I will accept that. This is short of HTML. Technically speaking, it's not HTML. There are some subtle differences. But 95% of the code you will see here is HTML. One of the reasons why React got the kingdom of JavaScript over Angular was because they didn't try to reinvent the wheel. In other words, imagine, and we got many students with that profile, that you don't know anything about JavaScript, but you know a bit of HTML and CSS. Yeah? That's a common profile in our academy. So, because you already know HTML and CSS, you don't start from scratch. You can already understand more or less that piece of code. Yeah? So that's thanks to the way React works. Technically speaking, this is not HTML again. This is called JSX. Some subtle differences. But anyway, from that distance, it looks like HTML for sure. All right, so let's do a quick test. Let's change line number 11. You remember? Edit, source app, and say to reload. So let me change the text just to see if my server reacts to my changes. So let me call it hello, how are you? Something stupid, right? I just want to make sure that my system updates my page. All right, back to the web browser. You see? It happens automatically. You don't even have to reload the browser. That may sound pretty natural to you, but historically speaking, you only have to refresh the page every time you change something. Yeah? So this is all about productivity, building more stuff in less time. Cool, because we know that our system is ready, our setup is pretty cool. So let's start building the app. Question for you. Imagine that you are the next Picasso or Da Vinci or whatever, yeah? And you are teaching other people how to paint and how to deal with art and all these things. So if you go to an art academy, how do you think it's better to start a painting? Is it better to start a painting using a blank canvas? Or is it better to start a painting on top of another existing painting? What do you think? The same? The second, so you prefer to paint something on top of an existing painting rather than an empty canvas? Blank canvas? Well, you are creating art, right? So you are starting something fresh, something new. You are not copying, you are not modifying existing art, right? So I hope you agree with me that blank canvas and then you start painting red, blue, whatever the colors you want to paint, right? So the same thing applies to React. If I want to build the next multi-trillion startup, the next unicorn, I don't want to have the React logo there. I don't want, what the hell is that? Why I got that background color? I want to start from scratch, yeah? From zero, literally from zero. So how do we do that? Well, pretty simplistic, right? Let's just remove the header. So you see all the HTML, apart from the root one, all the lines now out. So now let me display some text like, welcome to the Movies app. Once again, feel free to change the content. That's up to you, depends on your appetite today. All right, so once we have that piece of text, back to the web browser, and then what? Yeah, I mean, it's very small, but it works, right? And now, how do you agree with me? This is a much better starting point, because now we can prove how good we are with UI, styling, UX, all these sort of things, right? Don't forget that software is not only about being performant, it's about looking good. Yeah? If you build something amazing, but it's not performant, or sorry, it doesn't look nice, it's not going to work. All right, so even though it works, I hope you agree with me that it's not a good title, it's very small. So can anybody tell me, how do you change the size of the text using only HTML? H1, fantastic. So let's prove the theory. I told you before that if you know HTML, you can reuse all the principles you've learned, right? So H1, and then you close the tag with the slash. Eh? Don't forget the slash at the end. Do you want me to zoom it a bit? Something like that, right? So back to the web browser. There you go. Looking better, right? I mean, this is not a UX session. This is not about building a pixel perfect app. But anyway, I hope you agree. Now it looks at least better in relative terms. So the next thing I would like to do is to display my favorite movie. I would like to display 3 movies today. Let's start with the first one. So how do we do that? Well, let me add a div. If you don't know anything about the HTML, a div is just like a container, like a box, where you can drop stuff inside of it. And now let's display the title of the movie. So once again, feel free to pick your favorite movie. You don't have to follow me in that case, literally. So for instance, one of my favorite movies is Mega Shark versus Crocosaurus, right? So I got my title, back to my web browser, I can clearly see title is there. So now the next point is, if I just wanted to display the titles, that's fine. But I hope you agree with me, that's a bit boring, right? When you consume an app, you want to see pictures, colors, stuff like that, right? So let's learn how to render a picture with React. The very first thing is find the picture, right? That has nothing to do with coding. It's just going to Google and then Mega Shark versus Crocosaurus. Go to Google Images and then find your picture and then right click, save image as, and now be careful guys. Be careful where you download the image. Don't save it on your desktop. Don't save it on your downloads folder. It should be part of your project. one of the core aspects of modern software is that projects are self-encapsulated. All the dependencies should be inside of the project. So once again, we need to find the location of your project. So, yeah. Once you find the project, another important thing, don't save the picture on the root folder of your project. It won't work. Please save it on the SRC folder. SRC folder. All your stuff, all your code snippets, pictures, audio, video, blah, 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 it goes all inside of the SRC folder. And then you save it. By the way, I will suggest to rename the file because otherwise it's going to have a dodgy combination of alphanumeric characters. Yeah? If not, you can do it later on, don't worry. But I'm going to rename it to Megasarc. All right, so how do you know you did it right? Well, once you save it, if you did it right, you should have your file. You see that VS Code immediately detected the new file. Yeah? It should be on the same folder as app.js. And if you click on the picture, it should display. Yeah? Obviously, the picture is not going to be rendered yet, but at least we have incorporated it into our project. So, how do we effectively render a picture on the screen for our customers? We need to do two things, two steps. First of all, we have to import the picture into our component. To me, the example is like when you go to Tesco to buy a pint of milk, you import it into the fridge. You're not consuming it yet, probably, but it's there, it's available. So at some point, you consume it. So that's the same principle. You import your image, you make it available for the future. How do we import the image? Look at the syntax. Import, and now a variable with the name of the picture. It doesn't matter what you type here, but please type something meaningful. In my case, I would like to call it Megasarc. And now, the location. Where is that picture? We need to type from. And now, the location of the image. Can anybody tell me how do you refer to a file? Oh. How do you refer to a file that is on the same directory as the current one? Dot slash, correct guys, dot slash, and finally, the name of the picture, including the extension. Be careful guys, if you got a JPEG or a PNG, don't mess around, yeah? So, my next question is, if I now refresh the page, will my sexy Megasarc picture be displayed? Yes or no? No, why not? Correct. On the HTML bit, we are not using it. Yeah? The milk is on the fridge, but that's it. So, in HTML, how do we display a picture? IMG tag, right? And then what else? Location of the picture. SRC, be careful. On the first day of our bootcamps, people always mess around between SRC and SCR. SRC, yeah? SRC. And now, let's see the first difference between HTML and JSX. In HTML, you will do something like that. Dot slash Megasarc, yeah? Something like that. That's the way HTML works. However, in React, you don't do that. In React, this is very important because we got the image here. You see, we got a variable on line number 3. Now we want to refer to that variable. How do we do that? With curly braces. React loves curly braces. Every time you refer to a variable, you have to use curly braces. And now inside of the curly braces, you put your variable name. In my case, it's Megasarc. And finally, you close the tag. Yeah, that's the way it works. So, will it work now? Yes or no? What do you think? Yes? Yeah, you tried? All right. So, let's go back to our application, and here you go. We got the Megasar cover. So it works. It clearly works. Yeah. So that's the way you can add images. Let's talk about semantics. The most aspect of coding is not to write code, it's to read code that someone has written. Yeah, we train a lot board challenges where you have to understand others' code. So for instance, let me rename the variable name from Megasark to Brexit. So do you think, guys, this will work or not? It's actually the only scenario where Brexit may work as expected. Still works, you see? But even though technically speaking, we've satisfied our appetite, from a human perspective, do you think that's a valid variable name? It's clearly not, because it's not reflecting the content of your picture. If we were talking about Brexit, it could be okay, but we are not talking about Brexit. So let's rename it back to Megasark. So Megasark, and then Megasark. By the way, you can see, to me, Megasark is one word. But what happened if I assume it's two words, Mega and Sark? So look at what they've done. I've capitalized S. I changed the small s with a big S. So talking about case styles. So does anyone know what case style am I using here? Camel case, that's correct. So that syntax where you join multiple words with capital letters is called camel case because it looks like the shape of a camel, more or less. And what happened if I change the first character to capital? That's not camel case anymore. Does anyone knows the name of this case? That's a bit more complicated. That's Pascal case, because Pascal, a very old programming language, use it a lot. And what if we are PHP developers and we like to use underscores? Something like that. What's the name of this case? Snake, that's correct. That's a snake case because it looks like a snake, maybe, yeah. And finally, all these examples are valid in JavaScript. Yeah? You can use any of them. The next one is not valid in JavaScript, but it is in other languages. If I use a dash or a hyphen, something like that, what's the name of this case? Say it again. It's right. It's kebab case, yeah? Because it looks like you got the blade going through the meat, yeah? That's at least the 21st century of referring to that case. Historically speaking, it was Lisp case. But anyway, that's a different discussion. So, ignoring our friend the kebab case, either snake, camel, or Pascal are valid in JavaScript. So now the question is, which one should we use and why? Snake. Why? Okay, fine, snake. Why? That's not a valid answer then, right? Say again? Hyphen? Yeah, kebab? No, kebab is not valid. You cannot use kebab. Camel. Okay, fine enough. I don't mind which one. Why camel?
Because you get the help in the word starts, so
But you
should start with lowercase.
Yeah, okay, but with snake case, you can also see the word, right? So there isn't any technical reason why we should use one over the other, but that doesn't imply we can do whatever we want. We should use camel case when dealing with variables. Camel case. And now the question is, why? Because there is an organization somewhere looking after the styling standards. Okay? There is a company that decides or suggests what's the best way of dealing with JavaScript. Does anyone know which company am I talking about? No, it's not W3C, no. Say again, no, not Mozilla, no. Who said Airbnb? Yeah, that's right. It's Airbnb. You know Airbnb? When you go to Magaluf to get drunk on holidays, yeah, and you book a room on a shared apartment, on a shared flat. Airbnb, yeah, it's quite surprising, but it's true. It's not the only company dealing with styling standards, but Airbnb has the most popular JavaScript and React style guide because it's very simple. Yeah? So according to Airbnb standards, whenever we create a variable, we should use camel case. Yeah? Why we got that? Because if everybody follow the same coding styles, it will be much easier to understand the code that your colleagues have written, right? I hope you agree with me. Cool, all right, so we got the first image. I would like now to repeat the same exercise with 2 additional pictures. And I'll do that in a row. I'm not going to stop after every image. In other words, I'm going to Google, I'm going to download 2 additional images, and I'm going to display them straight away, yeah? Because it's just about repeating the same exercise. I'll show you once we've done that, what's the point. I'm trying to present you a problem, and then we'll see how to deal with the problem. All right, so feel free to find your favorite pictures. So my second favorite movie is MegaPython versus Gatoroid. So once again, just find, your favorite one. Remember to rename the file before you save it, and to leave it on the SRC folder. And there's a good one, Sark Exorcist. So we download Sark Exorcist into our project, right? So now, back to our Visual Studio Code, we import them, import MegaPython from MegaPython. I'll check the extensions in a minute. And finally, import Sark Exorcist from, something like that. So now let me make sure that the file names are right: MegaPython, MegaSark, and Exorcist. Yeah. So now we can just display them. You can copy the first picture and then duplicate it. There are a lot of tricks with VS Code. So once you become an advanced developer, you can do things like, instead of copying and pasting, look, just using my keyboard, I'm quickly copying things, right? If you're curious about that, you can perform that trick, which is very convincing when you're doing a job interview, by the way. So the only thing you need to do, you need to highlight the content you want to copy. And then if you are a Mac user, you need to hold Option-Shift down. If you're a Windows user, I think it's Control-Shift down or Alt-Shift down, something Shift down. Yeah. So then we just have to rename the titles: MegaPython versus Gatoroid, and finally Sark Exorcist. And of course with the appropriate image: MegaPython, and finally Sark Exorcist. Yeah? So let's quickly check if I did it right or I failed miserably. All right, so we got MegaSark with the picture. Fine, it works. What else? MegaPython with the picture. Fine, it works. And Sark Exorcist with the picture. So it works fine. Yeah, we definitely managed to add the 3 pictures. So now let me present you the problem. Imagine that we go live with this setup. We deploy our web application to the cloud. We create native apps based on that development. And we start getting traction on the market. Customers, funding, millions, money, all these things. And at some point, our business analyst or our UX designer suggests that we may want to increase a bit the size of the titles on each movie because they feel a bit small. It's a stupid example, but I want to present the problem. So at the moment, can you tell me how many lines of code do I have to change to satisfy the appetite of our UX specialist? Free, that's correct. Why free? Because we have free movies. Imagine that you don't have free movies. Imagine that you work at Netflix. They have thousands of TV shows, right? Do you think that if Netflix tomorrow changed the title, the color of its movie, they had to go one by one through all the episodes and everything manually? Clearly not. Clearly not. Yeah? Thankfully, React has something to help us on the process of scaling our application. Let me present you arguably the most important aspect of React, the component. A component is essentially a piece of code that you can reuse many times. You create it once, like a template, and then you reuse it many times. How many times you receive an email from a web page you subscribe it and tells you something like, hello, $user. These are the updates for this month, yeah? That's because that's a template that hasn't been correctly interpolated. Who the hell is $user? But that's a different story, right? That's a template. So let's talk about templates. So a template is essentially, at least on its most basic shape, is just a JavaScript function. If you don't know what a JavaScript function is and all these things, let me recommend you a series of video tutorials that are free in our Codery platform. So if you go to video tutorials, you can find many interesting things like meetup events. So we have a list of video tutorials about how to deal with JavaScript, for instance. Yeah. And also, if you want to focus on particular aspects of JavaScript, we got something very popular, which are the coding recipes. Very short, 1-minute videos where we explain a particular topic about coding, yeah? All right, so how do we create a JavaScript function for the time being? Well, we just have to get used to the syntax. We type function, and then the name of your component, because I want to hold information about my movies, and this is going to be a template generator. I want to call it movie in singular, yeah? So that movie will be used many times. So movie, look at the syntax. We open and close parentheses, which is an American word, by the way, and then we open and close curly braces or curly brackets. So now, the idea behind this, we type return, and finally, what our component will return. Let's do an example. It can return a piece of HTML. For instance, hello. Why I'm doing that? Because now we can easily hook that component from our HTML. How do we do that? A component is just an HTML tag, like an image, like a div, like a table, HTML. And consequently, we can do that. See? Movie. Easy. So if we go back to the web browser, what is it? Here we go. You see? I got my hello text immediately rendered. Can I display that multiple times using the sexy trick to copy it? Will that work? No, why not? Of course it will work. That's the entire point about React components. You create something once, and then you reuse it 2 million times if necessary. Yeah? That's the entire point about components. So, okay, because I don't want to display hello, I want to display my sexy movies, right? So let me replace the content of my movie component with something like that. By the way, even if that's correct, if you've done a bit of HTML, you will agree with me that the indentation here is horrible, completely random. Look at all this spacing, that's wrong. Thankfully, with Visual Studio Code, we can format our HTML automatically. And to do that, the only thing we have to do is right-click anywhere, and then, even though you cannot see that properly, there is a button, an option called Format Document. Just pay attention to my new component. Oh, see? That's pretty cool. It helps a lot on readability purposes. I know some people think, hey, wait a minute, if I'm creating software just for myself, I don't have any colleague or any other developer, what's the point of looking after these details? I'll tell you something, every software company has at least 2 developers, you and you 6 months later. So even if you are not working with anybody else, if you do things like that, in 6 months' time, if you have to review that code, you will think, what the hell? Why I did that, right? So always please look after this type of thing, especially because it's very simple. You have to do it in an appropriate manner, more or less. All right, so let me remove my movies and let me just have 3 references to my movie component. So now my next question is, will this work as expected? Will we have a list of our 3 movies or not? Yes, no? This, yes, no? Oh. So first of all, I think we'll have 3 movies, 1, 2, and 3, because we are rendering the movie component 1, 2, and 3 times. Yeah, that's okay. However, someone spotted the content of each movie won't be right. It will be okay on the first one. Yeah, so Megasark will be okay. But let's see what happens. Look, Megasark, cool. But if we scroll down, oh, the second one is the same. And if we keep scrolling, oh, the third one is the same. That's not right. So the idea is okay, I hope you agree with me. However, the implementation is not right because the component is hard coding the title and the picture. That's not right. So now let's learn how to change hello $user with hello Jeremy or hello Anthony. Yeah? Let's interpolate, let's customize the behavior of our component. How do we do that? It's pretty simple. We need to do 2 things. First of all, we need to pass the data from here to the top. We need to pass the data. And how do we pass the data? Yes, as HTML attributes. So if you know HTML, you know how to do that. So for instance, let's pass an attribute called title. And now the title of the movie, Megasark versus Crocosaurus, right? So let's do the same thing for all our 3 movies, 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, and let me quickly rename them, MegaPython versus Gatoroid, and finally Sark Exorcist. Yeah. So now the question is, will it work? Let's ignore the pictures. The pictures are wrong. But regarding titles, will I have 3 different titles? Yes or no? No, why not? Correct. Look, even though from that perspective we are passing the right data, at least about the titles, is the component actually caring about that? No. The component, the movie component, is strictly displaying Megasark versus Crocosaurus. In other words, we have to bind these 2 components. Eh? We need to bind the main component with the movie component. And how do we do that? Well, we can pass what we call in JavaScript an argument. That generally speaking, we like to call it props. So props, you can call it Brexit again if you want. It doesn't really matter. It's just a name of a variable. It doesn't matter. The point of a props is that's an object. In JavaScript, an object is like a dictionary. Yeah? Made a user object. We can hold key value pairs. First name, last name, age, email, like a database, yeah, with properties and values. So that's an object. And that object holds the information that we are passing, the title in this particular case. So, does anyone know in JavaScript how do we access the title property of a props object? Dot title, something like that. Props dot title. So generally speaking, that's right. With a dot notation, you can access elements of your dictionary. Once again, if I'm speaking Chinese, check our video tutorials, right? Let's see what happened. Let's run it. Oh, not what we expected. We got the hello dollar user problem here, right? Why? Because we are not interpolating the title. If you remember before, I told you that whenever you want to access any JavaScript variable in React, which symbol do we need to use? Curly braces, that's correct. That's correct. Curly braces. It changed color, right? And so you spot that, and it was white and now it's bluish. So now, as you can see, the titles are right. Cool. So let's repeat the exercise for the pictures. So once again, we got the title. So we can add another attribute called picture. And then we refer to the variables that we're importing from top of our component. Please remember, guys, to use curly braces once again. Why? Because we are dealing with JavaScript variables. Whenever you deal with JavaScript variable, surround it with curly braces. Yeah? It's always the same. Picture, picture, picture. And finally, picture exorcist. Yeah? All right, so will it work now, guys? Will I have the correct pictures? No, why not? Correct, we got the same problem, you see? Even though now, hopefully, we are sending the right information, the movie component is ignoring the picture, right? So that's wrong. So can you tell me, I'm not going to do that, can you tell me what should I type here inside of the curly braces? Props dot picture. Correct. Why picture? Because that's what we are passing here, right? They had to match. All right, so let's see if it works. Here you go, you see? So now we have a beautiful setup. Why? I asked you a question 11 minutes ago. How many times we had before to change the title of our movies? You told me 3 times. Now, how many times do I have to change the size of the text to satisfy our UX designer appetite? Once, that's correct. Only once. Yeah? So I hope you agree with me that now the system scales much better because we don't really care whether we have 1, 2, 3, or 3,000 movies. Yeah? The effort is the same. Scales really well. And as you can hopefully see, now the titles look bolder, bigger. Yeah? So the very last thing about this blog is, what if now we keep getting good traction on the market and now we want to add the score of its movie? Yeah, we have a database of people who are rating movies, yeah, like Rotten Tomatoes, things like that. So how can I pass that information to the component? Well, we can simply keep adding attributes, right? Like score, yeah, whatever, 7.6, and then the next movie score, that's a bit worse, so 7.1, and the last one score 5.6. No, that's wrong. 6.1, yeah, or 6.3. It's not that bad. So you see, now we're passing new data, the score. So essentially here, we can, near the title, we can display that information, right? Like average score, browse the score, something like that, right? So we can easily customize the behavior of our component. You see, average score, and average score. Yeah? I hope that works. Just one more thing, guys. So whenever I review code from my colleagues, I tend to complain about these 3 lines. Can anyone smell why I don't like these 3 lines of code? it's forcing me to do horizontal scrolling. Have you spotted that virtual line here? That's a way Visual Studio Code is telling you, hey, maybe you went too far. So if that happened, please think about moving lines around. It's just a recommendation. The code works. That works. However, that goes against readability. So whenever you got that problem, I recommend you to do something like that. Look how cool this is. You can have one attribute per line. And I hope you agree with me. Now, the code is easier to read. I don't need to keep scrolling with 2 fingers left and right. Yeah? Much easier to read. And of course, everything works. A general rule about coding is whenever you change something, back to the web browser and make sure it works as expected. Yeah? Don't do like in the Hollywood movies where they code for 20 minutes and then everything works. This is not going to be okay. Yeah? Do you know the joke about coding in Hollywood movies versus coding in real life? Let me show you. YouTube. Coding movies versus reality. Will I find it? If not, I'll show you something. Coding Hollywood movies versus real life. All right, unfortunately I cannot find it now. But anyway, here you go, I found it. Oh, there is no sound. Let me see if I can play some sound. All right, so there is no sound. I cannot actually show you, but I hope you get the point, right? Look, I play it again. So in Hollywood movies, type code a lot, blah, 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 and then in reality, what you do is just looking at the screen for half an hour, looking where the issue is, right? Cool, sorry about that. So, is there any questions so far? No? All right, so we just have 10 minutes left. On the last 10 minutes of this session, I would like to show you, as promised, how do we code at Codery, how our students become successful developers. Yeah, you can use that tool for free. That's why I'm presenting that to you. I believe you already joined the platform just to watch the videos. So you probably spotted the training section. So on the training, you can practice your coding skills across different categories. Yeah. This is going mobile, so you'll be able to play challenges with your smartphone. So I completely recommend you to play with it, and you are invited to join it at any time. All right, so let's do a bit of training. Let's do training with mobile, by the way. So you can select React, and then the level of difficulties we cover from the very, very, very basics to the expert questions. All right, so let's do a test. Let me present you the mobile version of Codery. See if it works, still experimental. So let's try to understand the problem. This is based on TDD. That means we present you a problem first, and then on the right-hand side, we need to fill the gaps. Yeah? Problem, code. So according to this algorithm, can you see the screen, by the way? Yeah? So we expect it to create a welcome component. You see, welcome component. So whenever we render it, we should display welcome to React. So can you tell me what's the right answer? Is it A or is it B? Let me show you the code again. You see the code? That's where the issue is, right? A or B? Why A? Exclamation mark. Let's try it. So we mark A, and then we got confetti time. That means that that's right? So we can jump to the next question. This is very basic, right? But obviously it gets more complicated. So on the next question, let's try to understand the issue. Once again, we got a welcome component, but in this particular use case scenario, we are expected to add 2 P tags. Does anyone know what the P tag stands for? Paragraph, correct. So 2 paragraphs. Yeah? On the first one, welcome. On the second one, to React. So once again, imagine that you're using your smartphone. So swipe right, and then, so what's the right answer? A, B, C, or D? Let me show you once again the expectation. You see? You see the line? Yeah? B? All right, let's mark B. Oh, it's not B. You can see we are highlighting the line where you miserably failed, right? So the problem here is we expected you to have 2 paragraphs. However, got 1. What is the second paragraph? There is no second paragraph. So then what? A. Do you agree with A? Why A and not C? In other words, is JavaScript case sensitive? It is. JavaScript is case sensitive because A and C are the same. Ignoring capital slow characters is the same, right? But if I select C, I will fail again. See, look at the problem. Expected to react to equal to react. And you maybe think it's the same. If you speak, it's the same. But if you write it, it's not the same. So let's mark option A. All right, we got confetti. Yeah, so yeah, I'm going to leave the training here, but this is just to present you the way it works, right? Once again, this is pretty fundamental, but it gets more complicated. And at some point, you need to do proper coding if you're using your laptop. What happened at the end? Look, we're giving you a score. We're evaluating how good your performance was. And that's a way you can see how far or how close you are to make 1,200 a day. Yeah? So as part of this system, we also play coding challenges. A coding challenge is an activity where you can essentially play against other developers. So let me give you an example. One of the largest events we've run in 4 different countries, UK, Spain, France, and Russia, we got about 200 developers fighting against each other. Yeah? So you can create challenges by yourself, you can play with your colleagues, and then you can play by teams, which I believe is pretty interesting. So playing by teams means you join a team, and then we get the average score, in this case because we play by countries, right? But in this case, so we can see where are the best developers in Europe, right? So in that particular challenge, you can see that the victory went to the UK. The first time UK won a challenge, by the way, after 6 attempts. But that's a different story. So that's pretty much it, right? If you like the competitive aspect of the system, you can see the best developers across a period of time, statistics by day, by week. We got about 2,000 developers from 56 countries playing with it. So you are more than welcome to join the Codery world, right? Do you have any questions? No? All right, so that was it from my side. I hope you enjoyed the session. I'm going to stay here for a while. Merry Christmas, guys, and looking forward to see you next year. Thank you very much.